Ah, the Klingons. Who doesn't love the Klingons? Our editor Tom, that's who doesn't love the Klingons. A lot of other people love them though. That's not to say they haven't changed again and again and again since they've arrived on the scene back in 1966. But who are they? How exactly have they changed? Why do they keep changing? Who are they running from? Have we checked their accounts of the Cayman Islands? These are all very good questions. Maybe check the original article written by Frank Chavez over on whatculture.com. There may be answers. There may not be. I am Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are 10 ways the Klingons have developed since the 1960s. Number 10. They weren't honourable and actually kinda racist. The Klingons were created by screenwriter and Star Trek showrunner Gene L. Coon for the episode Errand of Mercy. According to story editor DC Fontana, they soon became the series' recurring villains instead of the Romulans, since creating the Klingons' swarthy appearance was cheaper than creating multiple pointy ears. Created during the Cold War, the Klingons were originally stand-ins for the Soviet Union and Communist China. According to Science Fiction by Adam Charles Roberts, although occasionally shown as honourable, they were usually presented as brutish, murderous and scheming. Coon's script for Errand of Mercy described the Klingons as oriental-looking and hard-faced. According to an interview in Cinefantastique, John Colicos, who played Kor, and the makeup artist Fred Phillips developed the look for the Klingons, featuring a dark skin, shaggy hair, beards, and Fu Manchu mustaches. This design leaned heavily on racist Asian stereotypes and would hardly pass muster today. Fortunately, the greater budget of Star Trek the Motion Picture meant that the Klingons could be redesigned. Klingons, with the now familiar ridged foreheads, made their debut in 1979's Star Trek the Motion Picture. Number 9. Klingon honor originated in a script for an unrealized Star Trek spin-off. As central as honor has become in modern depictions of Klingons, it wasn't originally part of their character. Klingon honor actually originated in Kitumba, a script for the unrealized Star Trek spin-off Star Trek Phase 2. Written by John Meredith Lucas, Kitumba featured a Klingon empire modelled on feudal Japan, with its emphasis on honor and Bushido, or Way of the Warrior. This version of the Klingon Empire would have been led by a head of state called the Kitumba, who would have been worshipped as a godlike ceremonial figure, much like the emperor in feudal Japan, whilst real political power would have been held by the shogun-like warlord. The episode would also have revealed that Klingon was not the name of their species, but rather the name of the samurai-like warrior caste. The rest of the species would have been part of one or two other castes. Technos would have been the technicians and scientists, while subjects would have been the ordinary citizens of the Empire. Number 8. You haven't experienced Shakespeare until you've read him in the original Klingon. William Shakespeare was an English actor, poet and playwright known for his 3 narrative poems, 154 sonnets and 39 plays. He was arguably the greatest writer in the English language. Or was he? In Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country, Klingon Chancellor Gorkon asserted that Shakespeare was a Klingon. Throughout the movie, Klingon characters quoted Shakespeare with relish. General Chang, played with a melodramatic zeal by the late Christopher Plummer, delivered the most Shakespearean lines, including quotes from Romeo and Juliet, Henry IV, Richard III, Henry V, Julius Caesar, and The Merchant of Venice. On the audio commentary for Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country's Special Collector's Edition, director Nicholas Meyer said that the inspiration for Gorkon's assertion about Shakespeare came from Nazi Germany's similar attempt to claim Shakespeare. Linguist Mark Okrand, who had helped develop Klingon, had a hard time translating the iconic line "to be or not to be" because Klingon lacks the verb to be. Okrand's first attempt translated to live or not live, but Plummer didn't like that, and, well, you don't make Christopher Plummer recite bad Shakespeare. Okrand eventually hit on Taj Pach Tachbe, which roughly translates to continue or not continue existence. Number 7. The Klingon High Council. Old Boys Club. In the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Reunion, would-be Chancellor Gowron offers Kalar a seat on the Klingon High Council if she'll urge Picard to speed up the Jakuk, the lengthy ritual in which candidates for Chancellor prove their worthiness by reciting their accomplishments during the rite of succession. However, in Star Trek The Next Generation's Redemption and Star Trek Deep Space Nine's The House of Quark, it is stated that women may not serve on the Council. This is contradicted by the fact that 2 women, L'Rell in Star Trek Discovery and Azet Bor in Star Trek VI, have served as Chancellor. In a 1997 AOL chat, Ronald D. Moore said that he made the change to serve the plot of the House of Quark and to make the Klingons seem different from other Star Trek factions. He explained that they were a patriarchal society, and while some aspects had changed, the High Council was still the province of men. However, he emphasised that no male Klingon would ever question the idea of fighting alongside women. Number 6. Michael Dorn partly inspired the bat'leth, which was designed on post-it notes. The bat'leth, or Sword of Honour, sliced its way into Star Trek canon in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Reunion, when Worf used it to kill Duras as revenge for Duras' murder of Kalar. According to Klingon mythology, Kalos forged the first bat'leth from a lock of his own hair dipped in lava. According to Star Trek Communicator, issue 114, Star Trek writer Ronald D. Moore was inspired by comments from Michael Dorn that he wanted Worf's fighting style rooted in the martial arts. This aligned with Moore, who compared the Klingons to samurai. Moore shared his idea with Dan Curry, a member of both the special and visual effects teams and a martial arts expert. As Curry recalled in Star Trek The Next Generation, The Continuing Mission, the designs created in the effects departments were overly familiar, so Curry began sketching out his own ideas on post-it notes. This was inspired by Nepal's iconic kukri and Chinese swords. Once Curry was satisfied, he showed executive producer Rick Berman a rough model. Although it was just foam core, Berman approved it. Number 5. Klingon Warriors killed the gods. Every culture has a creation myth. As described in Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode You Are Cordially Invited, in the Klingon creation myth, anonymous gods created the heart of Kortar, the Klingon Adam, from fire and steel. When they sensed his loneliness, they made him a mate with an even more powerful heart. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, the first two Klingons showed their appreciation to the gods by kneeling in prayer and offering sacrifices. Aww. They killed the gods because, as Worf so succinctly put it, they were more trouble than they were worth. Then they burned the heavens to ashes. For his part in the deicide, Kortar was condemned to an eternity ferrying the dishonoured dead to the gates of Grethor on Barge of the Dead. According to deleted lines from the Star Trek Voyager episode, Barge of the Dead, Kortar's mate, Shelka, was condemned to spend eternity wandering the land of the living, never to see Kortar again. But if Kortar and Shelka killed the gods, who administered these punishments? Number 4. Excuse me, sir, do you have time to talk about our Lord and Saviour, Kalos the Unforgettable? Klingon warriors may have killed the gods, but that doesn't mean they didn't worship anything. The major figure of worship was the first emperor of the Klingon Empire, Kalos the Unforgettable. Kalos was introduced in the Star Trek The Original Series episode, The Savage Curtain. The episode featured simulations of Kalos, Abraham Lincoln, and other historical figures in a drama staged by the non-humanoid Excalbians as part of their exploration of the human concept of good and evil. This version of Kalos was depicted as a savage tyrant. The writers for Star Trek The Next Generation developed a more benign version of Kalos. As related by Worf and other Klingons, Kalos was a 9th century warrior who slew the tyrant Molor and united the Klingons in the first Klingon Empire. He was idealized as the greatest warrior of them all, the creator of the laws of honor, the forger of the first bat'leth, and a fount of wisdom. At the end of his life, Kalos told his followers that he would return someday, and then departed for Sto-vo-kor. Number 3. Where will you spend eternity? In Sto-vo-kor? The first two Klingons may have killed the gods, but, as first mentioned in Star Trek The Next Generation, Klingons still had an afterlife. Overseen by Kalos, Sto-vo-kor, the Klingon afterlife for the honourable dead, was a paradise, if your idea of paradise was fighting all day and feasting all night. 9th century Norsemen would have enjoyed it, just as much as the Klingons, as it was similar to the Viking concept of Valhalla. There were many paths a warrior could take to Sto-vo-kor. These included dying in battle, performing a heroic deed, and being ritually killed by a fellow Klingon. In cases where a Klingon died in a dishonourable fashion, the deceased's loved ones could perform a great deed in the deceased's name. This act was meant to show that the departed had lived a life that could inspire feats of courage. Before the Klingon afterlife was mentioned on television, it was discussed in the novels published by pocketbooks. The honourable dead would serve in the Black Fleet, their rank determined by their achievements in life. The Black Fleet and Sto-vo-kor were both mentioned in Star Trek Discovery as part of the same belief system. Number 2. Or Grethor. As depicted in the Star Trek Voyager episode Barge of the Dead, Grethor was the afterlife for Klingons who died without honour. It was the exact opposite of Sto-vo-kor. Instead of being greeted by the spirit of Kalos the Unforgettable, the dishonoured dead were met by Fekler, the gnarly-headed bestial Klingon thing first seen in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Devil's Due. Rather than eternal feasting and combat, Fekler meted out eternal torments much like the devil in some versions of Christian hell. However, the torments of the dishonoured dead began long before they even arrived at Grethor's gates. After they died, the dishonoured dead were ferried down the River of Blood on the Barge of the Dead. The barge was captained by Kortar, the first Klingon. While on the barge, the dead were tempted by siren-like serpents, the Kuskarai. These serpents called the dead in the voices of loved ones before dragging them into the water to spend eternity. For example, in Barge of the Dead, B'Elanna Torres heard the voices of her Voyager crewmates. Number 1. Klingonese Pintach. Do you speak it? First mentioned in the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, the Klingon language wasn't spoken on screen until Star Trek the Motion Picture. It was originally conceived by dialectician Hartmut Scharf, James Doohan, and producer John Povell. According to both Return to Tomorrow, the filming of Star Trek the Motion Picture, and Star Trek Monthly issue 80, Doohan became involved in creating Klingon when he learned that Gene Roddenberry didn't like what Scharf had created. According to Povell, Scharf created exactly what they needed when he developed the Vulcan language, but his Klingon didn't sound alien enough. Doohan and Povell combined Scharf's concept with their own nonsense syllables. Doohan taught the resulting gibberish to Mark Leonard and the other Klingon actors. According to the books From Elvish to Klingon, Exploring Invented Languages, and In the Land of Invented Languages, when Leonard Nimoy directed Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, linguist Mark Okrand fleshed out the language with a grammar and expanded vocabulary. Okrand's work led to the Klingon dictionary and other references. Fans have used these references to create Klingon translations of literary works, including Gilgamesh, Hamlet, and The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. That's everything for our list today, folks. What did you think? Let us know in the comments below. Big thanks to writer Frank Chavez for this article, and thank you so much to the wonderful Martin Wilkinson for attempting to turn this into some sort of beautiful video. Remember, you can like, share, and subscribe, and catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture, and catch us on Instagram at TrekCultureYT. Catch myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter as well. Look after yourselves until I see you again. Make sure that you stay honourable, and make sure that you live long and prosper. Or, as the Klingons might put it, avoid death and cower. You look after yourself till I see you again, folks. Thanks very much. Yous are all honourably awesome.